5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Ladies and gentlemen, I appreciate very much your generous invitation to be here tonight. You bear heavy responsibilities these days.
Welcome to Stock Legends Radio Show, seeking answers, opinions, and the inside scoop, putting you in the front seat on Wall Street.
In today's market,
this is breaking news. Where is it going next?
StockLegends.com.
Stock Legends Radio, episode 21. Please welcome today's host, myself, Quick Draw. Also as a special guest today, we have the Manager of New Business Development from World Health Energy Holdings, public ticker symbol WHEN, CJ Lieberman. Welcome to the Stock Legends Radio Show.
Justin, it's a pleasure to be on the show with you today.
The pleasure is all ours. Before we get into the deep topics of what's going on with the company as of right now, why don't you take a quick moment and tell us about World Health Energy Holdings and what it was like coming up as a company in the public segment.
The R&D started off about 11 years ago, and we were focused on getting affordable commercial green energy. As you know, Mr. Diesel, when he invented diesel in 1900, he used vegetable oil. The reason why the world stopped using vegetable oil and switched to fossil fuel was mostly a cost aspect. So our goal was, can we create green energy at an affordable commercial cost?
You guys went in and were able to actually find a way to create this fuel with vegetable oil-based substances?
After 11 years, yes, we finally reached a commercialization of green biofuel. When we started off initially, we started off with algae, and our cost was $2,000 a barrel.
Wow.
And basically what we realized is we had to reinvent the whole system and process of algae for biodiesel so that it became commercially viable. And for that purpose, we innovated and created 20 new patents, all they're basically included in 2 patents, but the 20 innovations whereby we are now commercially viable on algae for biodiesel.
Why don't you tell the listeners today a little bit about the process? What's involved in the process of turning that into an actual usable fuel?
The idea of algae for fuel is not our invention. If you came to work today with a car, the chances are that the car that you drove is powered by algae. 60% of the world's oil reserves are algae, sunk to the bottom of the ocean, and whether over thousands of years or many more years than that, evolved into fuel. So the invention of algae for fuel is not our invention. However, to do it quickly, affordably, commercially, that is our innovation. In order to grow algae, you need to have photosynthesis, which is the sun, or you can use fluorescence. You need to have waves. If the algae is not moved, it will simply go to sleep and stop growing. Using microalgae, and then you need to have nutrition to feed it. Typically, in order to do that, I'll give you an example. One of our inventions whereby we save money is we were the first people to grow algae in plastic bag pipes. Typically, people were growing algae in large pools or in glass pipes. And by doing that, there's many problems involved. One is that in nature, it's survival of the fittest. If you take a glass of water and put it outside, there was 30,000 species of algae competing to see who will be the strongest strain that grows in that particular spot. By using our particular system, number one, it's a closed system, so we were guaranteed that only our algae is dominant. And number two, we save costs in the cost of the bioreactor.
That's truly amazing. And it says here that you aim to reach a cost of $50 per barrel. What kind of process would be involved, and how far are you away from reaching that goal? I've read places that using an algae or an alternative-based fuel source, can lower the cost per gallon down to like $1.50 a gallon for diesel. I mean, that's more than half of the price as a reduction.
Well, we're currently at under 100. When we scale up to 250 acres, our cost will be under $50 a barrel. What's important to realize is we've created a system that's commercially viable without subsidies. So that we look at the subsidies as a bonus, as a plus, but we haven't built our business model relying on subsidies.
Where are you currently doing these projects? I see here that you were looking to start a major project in 2012 in India. Where do you currently have these algae growing and getting ready for distribution?
Well, we have a smaller project. We've done 2 smaller projects, and we're now scaling up to larger 250-acre projects. We have LOIs and we have memorandum of understandings with large companies, and we're in the process of setting up larger scale operations. To give you an example, a 250-acre operation is $100 million in investment for startup costs and the first year's running costs, and it returns over $120 million a year. Of that, over $70 million is net per year without subsidies. If we're talking about in the United States, we're looking at probably over $100 million net if you get the blended subsidies or other state subsidies.
Those are amazing numbers. Now, let me ask you another question, because right now, as an economy and a globe as a whole, we're looking for alternative energy sources. Are there any kind of rebates or anything like that that could potentially come up because you are based in this industry?
Well, there's a blend-in subsidy of about $1 a barrel. So that is a significant subsidy. The other thing you need to take into account is that diesel in general is 20% more costly than crude. Green diesel, biodiesel, that is actually has a 20% premium on regular diesel. But there are federal guidelines whereby every single petrol company is supposed to blend in X percentage of green fuel. And since they're obligated to do so, they will pay a premium to do so. In Europe, for instance, there is a goal of reaching 20% green fuel. To date, they're barely reaching 6%. So there is a shortage of green fuel to meet the goals and standards that have been set by European and United States.
That's actually a huge opportunity. If you could find a way to ingrain yourself into one of those channels, I mean, that could open up some humongous doors and opportunities for your company. Let me ask you another question. I'm looking through here. There's a lot of companies that have this similar type of technology, but you guys found a way to use a wave machine which keeps the algae moving in the recyclable plastic sleeves and prevents it from going stale. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that technology and what your philosophy was behind that?
We're up to the 3rd generation in our wave machine. But even our 1st generation wave machine, again, if you look at the videos on our site, you can see it in action. And basically what we've done is we created a ripple effect. They always say if you put in $100 of energy, it's very easy to get out $10 of energy. The hook over here is to put in $5 in energy and get out $100 in energy. So our team very cleverly put together a cutting-edge technology, creating waves with using very, very little energy. When we started off, for instance, we used a 10 horsepower engine on a 1 dunam, which is a 1/4 acre project. Well, to date, we are now using a 1/2 horsepower engine to create the same strength of wave in a 1 dunam, 1/4 acre project. So we've cut down 95% of the energy needed in order for the necessary waves to grow the algae.
That's very unique technology. So if I were another company and I was operating in the segment, there would be a percentage of loss or almost like shrinkage due to the fact that this algae could go to sleep. Is that right?
Absolutely. The main issue is the cost here. I want to point out one thing. There were other good algae companies out there. The energy market is $1,000 million. So there is place in the market for $1,000 billion companies. The fact that there's competition is very good. I mean, we can't provide $1 trillion in energy. So it is good. There should be 1,000 other algae companies at $1 billion in order to provide the world demand for fuel. There isn't that number out there. There may be 5 companies that actually have a commercial system. So we're missing hundreds of companies in order to help meet the world's need for green energy. The other thing to point out is that the other companies mostly that are focused and have a commercial system on algae for fuel are not competing in our market. What they're doing basically is they're growing algae biomass. They're doing a distillery process and they turn it into ethanol in the same way as sugarcane is turned into ethanol. Where we differentiate from the other company is we're actually growing a fatter algae and then we can squeeze out the oil, creating biodiesel. I don't know of any company in the world that actually is growing algae commercially for biodiesel.
It's a wide open market right now, and it's actually seen a lot of growth. Domestically produced from non-petroleum renewable sources, biodiesel, here's just some advantages, can be used in most diesel engines, especially newer ones. Now, there's a particular filtration system and switch that would be installed in a vehicle that's able to operate under this alternative fuel. Is that right?
We tried out algae biodiesel. We had no problem putting it in a diesel car without any filter or anything necessary.
And this is biodegradable, non-toxic, a lot safer to handle. I mean, there's a multitude of advantages by actually switching to this kind of a resource. What really is amazing is the fact of the matter that oil itself, the black gold, is such a large global business that we're starting to see the turn in overall psychology worldwide, where they're starting to say, hey, we really have to start looking for some cleaner sources for fuel and diesel, so on and so forth. How do you feel like that turn in the market is going to be able to benefit you profitably moving into the next 5 or maybe 10 years?
Well, absolutely. I mean, algae biodiesel is 95% cleaner and less polluting than regular diesel. So that's obviously a plus for anybody who's worried about our grandchildren having a somewhat clean planet. And then the other thing is the fact that there was a shortage of biofuel. If you look at soy hit its lowest production peak that it's since 2003. We're running out of crude sources for fuel and we're running out of green sources. So there is a imminent must for alternative sources of biofuels.
I couldn't agree with you more. You've been around for 11 years. There's a lot of companies that come and go in the market. So the fact that you've been around for so long goes to show that you were able to put a strategy in place and expand on that strategy as you went. Taking a look at the actual process here, there's a few, these are called single-celled green algae. Now, there's a few different types. There's chlorella, spirulina, and ulva. What are these actually, do they work together to be able to create this type of energy release, or is it in the process of, what would it be like, distilling, or what's the actual process like for the algae? Are they for specific things?
Spirulina is mostly for nutritionals. It doesn't have very much value for biofuel. It would also be a great waste to grow spirulina for biofuel. Spirulina is a nutraceutical or pharmaceutical product, and it sells for between 20 times to 100 times what you can sell a kilo of algae for biofuel. So that's mostly focused. Even though our system is 95% less than the initial system we started with, we can still use that same system to grow high-grade nutraceutical and pharmaceutical algae. Now, when it comes to biofuel, it really depends on the territory that you're in. If you're in a territory where the temperatures are between 10 degrees to 25 degrees, you would then use chlorella. If you're in a territory where the temperatures are between 15 to 35, or preferably 20 to 35, there you would use Neochloris. And then it also depends on the water. So if you're using sweet water, you'd use Neochloris. If you're, for instance, using salt water, then you'd use Nanochloropsis. So it is aquaculture. It's a little bit more complex than your typical factory process. So you do have to adapt to the particular water and territory that you're in.
And you actually have a few of these different systems, and here's just one statistic I wanted to run by you. At a cost of roughly $60,000 per dunam, which I'm assuming is an acre, that's able to produce...
A dunam is quarter of an acre.
Oh, quarter of an acre, okay. And okay, $240,000 per acre. Now, if you were to actually take this and fill up that entire space with these systems, numerous systems, what kind of profit would you be able to turn off of that acre? Is that even how it's measured?
If you take 250 acres, then you'll be pulling in the United States, you'd pull in about $110 million net profit a year on 250 acres. If you weren't in the United States and you didn't have the blender subsidy, then you're looking at about $70 million net per year. So the turn is extremely rewarding.
Those numbers are very impressive. So as far as like a greenhouse effect, we're hearing about all these different things in the headlines. We've got global warming. The actual green belts are moving further north. The ice caps are melting. What kind of a difference in effect, just as far as from the ozone and a release, like a toxicity release, what kind of reduction do we see when using an algae as a form of diesel or fuel?
Well, you're reducing 95%.
Wow, 95%.
I mean, that's is almost a perfect dream.
Oh, that's amazing. That's a staggering number. They say
the other good thing here is actually if you have a power plant that is polluting CO2 into the atmosphere. So we've designed a very unique project where we take the CO2 from the power plant and we direct it into our algae fields, thereby cleaning up the whole CO2 emissions. We can clean up all the CO2 emissions from power plants and use it to double the production of algae in our algae field.
That's absolutely amazing. They say that J.D. Powers and Associates estimates that 50% of Europe's cars and trucks will run on only diesel or a biodiesel type of fuel by 2015 is what they're aiming for based on an article I'm reading here, Alt Energy PDF at Wells Fargo for investors. And that just goes to show you some of the growth. So there's certain countries that are basically stepping forward and saying, you know what, we're going to do our part. And that's still only less than 3% of their annual consumption there. So as countries start to move forward, like you said, I mean, there's already a gap right now between the supply and demand. So as these larger countries and larger movements into an alternative fuel source, such as algae, they're going to need to be able to fill these orders, and where are these orders going to come from?
100%. Even more so, people are looking at the electric car and going, it's a great invention. It is a great invention. What they forget to think about is, where does the electricity come for the electric car from? It's sort of a little bit of it's a little bit of an interesting problem in that right now, most countries are subsidizing the cost of electricity. So you have two problems with the electric car. You have one problem in the fact that electricity is being subsidized. As soon as people start using electricity for cars, then the state or government are going to say, why should we subsidize electricity and not subsidize petrol? There is no way that if the mass public turns towards using electricity for cars, that the government is going to subsidize electricity for cars and they're not going to subsidize petrol for cars. Instead, it's like this tax on the petrol, but subsidies on the electricity. It is a fact that is going to change as soon as people's habits in transportation change. That's one point. The other point is that you need to have a power plant in order to create the electricity. And if the power plant is using coal, then you're causing more pollution by using an electric car than by using a gas-powered car. Now, if you're using petrol, again, the power plant chimney is still polluting. So what people don't realize is that we still have some problems to solve with electricity in the car actually solving global warming.
Because you could be doing something right on the front, but if you're doing something equally as bad on the back, well, then you're not really moving forward at all. It's amazing, isn't it? So we take a look at the actual algae process here. They're called supercritical fluids, and they can extract up to 100% of the oil from algae. Isn't much that's disposed of out of the algae once it's been filtered.
Well, we have two options. We can either take the biomass and we can distill it into ethanol, so there's nothing wasted. The other option is, if we have a pretty clean system, is we can actually take the biomass and use it for animal feed. So it's actually one of the criticisms of biofuel is you're stealing food from the general population. Here, number one, that we're using non-arable land. We're using water that's not suitable for agriculture. And number two, we can actually add, by using the biomass and protein as a feed product. So we can actually add food instead of taking off food.
So this fuel, now, what other kind of aspects or areas could this fuel be broken down and used for? Is it just going to be particularly for diesel type fuel, or what else can run this type of a natural fuel?
Well, you can create ethanol, you can create diesel, and the other possibility is simply taking the biomass and converting that and powering a power plant directly from it. It's very interesting. If you're looking to power a factory or power plant, you don't even have to do a transterification. You can take the oil as is, put it into, I'd say there's several Lister engines, for instance, where you don't even have to use diesel. You can just take the vegetable oil, freshly squeezed, pour it into the engine, and create electricity.
Who would ever thought? That technology is actually, and the beauty of it really is that it's still such a new technology. Like you said, you guys are still discovering new ways to streamline certain processes and keep other processes a little bit more habitat friendly. So more or less, you're really just walking into the doorway on this huge opportunity that's brand new to the market. I mean, what are the opportunities here?
For example, if you look at the Pentagon is looking to buy green fuel. And when we talked with them, representatives of the Pentagon, then we asked them, why are you interested to buy green fuel? I mean, since when is the Navy worried about global warming? A couple of their bobs probably cause some global warming. So where is the worry about global warming, and why would they be interested to buy green biofuel? And their answer was very simple. If the cost of fuel is $100 a barrel, then the Navy or Pentagon's cost is actually $200 a barrel. And the reason for that is the cost of crude is $100, but in order to ensure that the petrol reaches United States, they basically have to put a U.S. tanker warships in the different straits in the Middle East in order to safeguard that the petrol reaches U.S. shores. So the cost of safeguarding the fuel is an extra $100 a barrel. That if the Navy can buy $150 green biofuel, there's a saving of $50 per barrel.
Imagine the savings on that grand of a scale. I mean, it'd actually probably take half of the states out of debt. I mean, that's going to be a huge number there. And the thing is, the infrastructure in the United States isn't adapted enough to be able to transport the fuel and oil underground from the north to the south. So we actually have a large structural flaw in the United States, and it's tough. We drill into the oceans to try and get the oil and diesel, and we have a giant main that breaks, and it does damage to the habitat. And, you know, on the other side of the ocean, like you said before, you could use some of the runoff. I mean, we got the Japan disaster. I mean, again, huge natural disaster, or not natural, well, half natural disaster. I mean, if you really take a look at all of these issues that have happened, especially over the last 5 years, it's all coming from situations that really could be avoided. You know, if we went towards more natural concepts, number one, everybody would save money, and number two, we'd be doing a giant justice to the economy and the globe as a whole. So this is actually one of the most exploding industries right now coming into the next 5 years, especially as, you know, these larger countries and segments are starting to get pushed towards a percentage. It doesn't have to be a large percentage. I mean, let's just even imagine each country said 10% of their diesel or fuel would be from a natural-based substance like the algae fuels. Even 10% would be an astronomical number that they would never be able to fill. So what kind of opportunity...
10% would be $10 billion. No, sorry, $100 billion. 10% of, and there is no algae company today that can provide even $100 million yet of biodiesel. So
Right.
we're far away. I mean, what we would like to believe is that we're going to produce a few $100 million in biofuel within the next 24 months. And then that would basically be literally the pioneers of algae biodiesel.
Right, exactly. And once you have a system that's put into place and mastered, I mean, there has to be opportunity also for the larger companies to come in, and rather than having to reinvent the wheel, saying, hey, you know, why don't we partner up in one aspect or another, or why don't we do something else? I mean, those doors at that point start opening, which is very exciting for the investors. I mean, at your current share price right now, the stock will move. I mean, it's had a ton of movement over the last 6 months. Literally an investor that got into a position right now, if potential profits came, I mean, could see astronomical gains, you know, if something were to catch wind here. Where are you at in the process right now as far as the locations that you have, and how close are you to having both feet on the ground with the India operation?
Well, we have the LOIs and MOUs signed, and we're building the projects, and we're scaling up. And our goal is over the next 24 months to produce a few $100 million of biodiesel. Now, if you look at similar companies to us, they have billion-dollar market caps, which are about 100 times more than our market cap, and their value is based on potential. So what we did is we took the business and we merged it into a shell. And we haven't done much investor relations. So we were first focused on building the business, getting it commercial. We now put it into a public vehicle. And basically, I'd say we have close to a shell value. By now going out and telling the public about what we have, we hope that the appreciation will be to give us a better value closer to our competitor.
And as an additional aspect, I've always told investors it's extremely important to have a well-versed management team in place. By looking at the management team that you have together here at World Health Energy, it's very impressive. You have some professionals here that have years of experience in some industries that can really help excel the company forward. You've got Laren Kosman, who has a BA degree in economics and business administration from the Hebrew University in Jerusalem. That's very prestigious. You have Mr. Kaiden, who was previously the director of Bank of Limau Real Estate Division. And you have Edward Blum, who even served on the board of directors for Merrill Lynch. So, I mean, you have some very educated professionals on your board of directors. How do you think that is going to help propel the company in the right direction moving in the future?
I think it's extremely important. We will be adding on other team players. We're looking to become a significant player in the world's trillion-dollar energy market, and having the right players. Edward Blum was Ministry of Energy for one of the states previously, and we have, for instance, one of our shareholders, Klal, which is Israel's largest insurance and investment firm. So we're basically aligning ourselves with the right team members and the right companies to try and become one of the world's leaders in the trillion-dollar world energy market.
It sounds like you have a strategic plan in place, and it's a very exciting industry to watch and learn about. It's actually kind of a tough industry to get across to the investors because the concept is so flat, but there's really so much involved behind the scenes, and the potential opportunity is astronomical. I mean, there's few segments within the public sector today that compete with the growth that we're going to see over the next 10 years in this particular aspect of the market. Positioned correctly with the right team behind you, I mean, really the sky's the limit as we start coming into the near future here. As an investor, right now with the price of stock, I mean, you could get in and really any small churn events, and you're already sitting in a deep profitable position on the company. There's really a lot of quality information here. We want the investors today to go and stop by stocklegends.com, and you will find the ticker symbol under one of the top tabs, WHEN, and you'll be able to see the full research report and also listen to the CEO interview at later dates, since it will be archived there. And CJ, it's really been our pleasure having you on the Stock Legends radio show today, and we're looking forward to seeing all that your company has to offer here in the short term.
Justin, it's a pleasure. I think investors can look forward to the wave upwards. One of the good things about where we're at now is that we're at an almost zero value for the business. So as we make progress and announce various deals and start to create revenues and potential, these guys are limited.
And we've always told our investors, keep an eye on the depreciated value stocks. As a new investor in the market, it's very easy for you to get excited by different breakout stocks that have already hit their peak. And a lot of the investors will run and they'll go to that stock, and by the time they get there, it starts going down. It's much better concept to take a look at the market from a depreciated value. I mean, that's where the profits are. You get in a stock in a company that has the right things going on, like your company does, that's in an exploding segment. I mean, the segment alone is enough to propel your public company. It's a no-brainer to be able to get in and hold a position at its current price. I think some significant profits will be made, and it's important to, do your research. I mean, do the research on the segment alone and the potential growth over the next 5 or 10 years. I mean, it's really astronomical.
This is the most exciting market segment of green biofuels. And the fact is that already nature has positioned algae as being the world's biggest source of green energy. All we're doing is trying to be able to give the same service as nature commercially. So we're using the most proven source of biofuel.
CJ, it's been our pleasure having you on the radio show today. Again, we want our investors today to take a look at ticker symbol WHEN. And also, we'd like to invite you back as you start to get a little bit further down the road and start really aggressively going after the rest of these aspects of these projects to come back on the radio show. Let us know how everything's going and what you have coming around the corner.
I look forward to being your return guest on your show, and hopefully we'll compare values as well at that time.
That'd be my pleasure, CJ. Again, thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank you. Have a good day.